Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and this is Chasing Legends. Welcome back, Chasing Legends. New year, second video of the year. Please hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave comments. We always check our comments. Check out our website, www.legendssuperstitionmountains.com. I have pushed the word on Trevor to get some more bark notes up. That being said and done, as we move into the new year, this was a story that someone actually inquired if we would be interested in doing something on it. And it kind of went with something else they talked about, and someone else talked about of going out and doing something in the field. And it was a trip I wanted to make because there's a couple of different stories associated with the area. And on top of it was someplace I wanted to take Trevor just so he'd been out there. The story we're going to talk about is J.J. Polka and the Polka maps. There's two of them. There's only a few resources you're going to find material on this. Tom Collenborn's Collenborn Chronicles, you can catch them online. Just put Collenborn Chronicles with a K. Collenborn with a K, Chronicles. You'll find there's a story on the polka stuff to do with that. Bob Ward alluded to it, and his Mysteries of the Superstitions or Superstition Mountains thing. His book, Ripples of Lost Echoes, is what we generally call it. And some of his manuscripts have little bits and pieces. And then Thomas Glover, I know, covered it in The Treasure Trails of the Superstitions, which is probably really difficult to get a hold of. I think this was not as quite as much as The Golden Dream, and then the third book was even fewer copies out there. But those will probably be the best resources where you can get some of the material, what I'll be talking about. And I thought it was interesting because, yes, I was aware of the story and all. It's a bit of an odd story. The first time most of us would ever hear of it would be from Tom Collenborn when he wrote about Walter Harvin. And Walter had ran into a guy in Kansas City in the Midwest who had some gold from what he called the Polka mine. And this would be probably sometime in the 40s because it was significantly earlier than when he met Tom. He met Tom around 1960-61. And he wanted to go in the mountains with Tom because Tom was very familiar with the mountains in that particular area. And they went up in through Whiskey Springs. He was inquiring to Tom about a cabin that was back in the mountains. Tom thought he might be talking about the one by Brad's Water. It turned out it wasn't. They went through the mountains and this guy actually found this cabin. There had been a door and a window under a boulder, kind of a rock-walled place up, but it was there was a camp there. Tom, I think, found, I can't remember what it was. I think there was an old knife, something else he had found it when he dug in the floor and they were digging around in there. And that was supposed to be Polka's camp. They didn't find anything else. They searched the whole area. Tom referred to it as the areas of Coffee Flats. Tom references Bob Ward in it, that years later, Bob Ward, he talked to Bob Ward, and Bob Ward knew about this story. Ward's version is a little different and kind of fills in some gaps for us. Ward, it kind of implies that he knew Polka, where I'm not very sure if he would have or knew. He must have known the story. But he inquired to a gentleman in Oklahoma City that had known Polka and got some maps. There are two maps, Polka 1 and Polka 2. If you have no reference or anything to any of these stories and look at the maps, you will be scratching your head trying to figure out. One seems to place it in one place and the other one is so vague that you could be anywhere in the mountains and try to place it. With those two maps, but other information that Ward got somehow, Bob Ward went back, and Bob Ward's story is he also found under a boulder, which is very similar to Tom's story, Polka's camp. He doesn't talk about a stone wall or nothing, but it doesn't really seem to matter. He said there was an old sleeping bag and some pots and pans and some stuff in there. Somebody had been camped. This would probably been after Tom. It could have been before. It's hard to say. Ward came out here after the Korean War. So he had, and at that time, I think he was partners with Chuck Hayler. So Ward went up there, and again, it's the area of Coffee Flat. Bob had been working for Chuck Crawford up in that area. At that time, he was associating with Chuck. They had an on and off relationship over a number of different things over time. And Bob was considered Chuck's security guy at the time when he's working the Cheryl Ann and some of those mines. So you have those two stories. Bob Ward's story says he found an old tobacco, drawstring tobacco pouch that had deteriorated that had 8 gold nuggets. The assay is pretty out there. I think it was something like 1,500 ounces per ton or something like that. Ward also said he found the pyramid of rocks that is referenced in the story. So it's kind of like, it's a bits and pieces story. Now, for most people, if you listen to the story, the Polka story is somehow Polka was Apache or mixed race, and that he had found out or heard about the mine, and he went out not being superstitious of any cultural appropriations and decided to look for it, and then just never seemed to have gone back. It's not significant. There's nothing mentioned about how much gold he would have found or anything like that. It's supposed to be in red and black rock. Sometimes it's referred to as the starry ore mine, or starry ore gold. That it's kind of like black with speckles of like stuff in it if you shine a light on it. It's had its little different references and kind of molded into other stories. You would find it's very significantly because there's a hill and some trees on a hill and all this stuff, and it sounds a lot like the Cochera story as well, in obviously different place. So that's one of the confusing aspects of it. Now we know where most of them thought it was, and the area they were working and looking at it is. Now I know there's some people that got confused, and one part of the confusion could be is when I was younger, people would use an old term name. Now Ward used generally, I think he used generally Coffee Flat. I think people by the 90s were using Coffee Flat whenever referring to Coffee Flat Mountain. When I was a kid, that was Old Squaw. Nobody would say Squaw Teat, but they would call it Old Squaw, go up on Old Squaw Mountain. Now Squaw, most people think of Old Squaw and New Squaw as Squaw Canyon over by Peters Mesa. But when I was younger, Squaw was generally Coffee Flat Mountain in reference to that. So I had an interest in it. I probably had heard the Tom's version of the story, one of his write-ups, in a newspaper when he was writing as Colton. But somewhere along the line, he probably had told the story, and I'd caught a gist of it, and I'd been up there once or twice in the area, so that I continued to go up. Now, there's a couple different references to stories, and one of them that everybody would remember would be the Stickman story, because that was one of the reasons I was up there. There was the Polka and the Wagner stuff that kind of set into that area. So that was one of the reasons I would go up there. Now, I can honestly say between whether you call it Castle Rock or Spanish Graveyard and Coffee Flat, that I never found anything really significant. It's a very rugged area of the mountains. It's a difficult area to kind of go through. There is, like Tom says in his article, there's a lot of cat claw, a lot of brush. It's a lot of choke-filled areas, so you're working your way through there. But it is kind of isolated. I don't think I've ever run into anyone, unless I was up there with someone else. I don't think I've ever run into anyone else up there. Now, it was a very, very specific area that John Tuning worked at for a number of years. He was very interested in. And there's been other people, of course, also associated with the fact there's supposed to be a massacre by Spanish Graveyard, which I've never found any of that. I remember a couple trips, or 3 trips out there, where I literally spent the entire day going up and down in every nook and cranny trying to find any evidence of, had there ever been any permanent camps, anything around in there that would even lend any credence to those stories. And I never found anything. I was fascinated with always going to areas and try to find those things. I never went up, and though I did have directions to it, I've never been to the boulder, the camp under the boulder, the Polka camp. But I was interested up on top of going through. Now, there's a number of people that I know I heard bits and pieces of different various stories from. And we would talk about it. They seemed to have some interest in the mountain themselves. I'd been up there quite a bit. I've probably made 8 or 10 trips up on Coffee Flat. And those trips, I would just basically wander around and just kind of like try to find high points, look down, find anything of interest, look around to see if I could find anything. I know there was the 3 teepees of rock. And one of the things I realized is it was very quiet, everyone's interest in Coffee Flat. I'm not using a bunch of names because all those people seem to be, keep it to yourself, but you know, when you're up there, check this out, go look at this, let me know if you find anything like this. So I found there was a lot of people had interest, including Bob Ward, who had a lot of interest up there. And I kind of found that odd because supposedly Peters Mesa during that time period, definitely during the after the Peters Mesa 70s and 80s boom, the 90s and early 2000s, everybody was convinced Peters Mesa was the place. And I noticed even some of those guys were kind of directed at and talking Coffee Flat. It was kind of like, but by the way, Coffee Flat. So I spent a lot of trips up there. It's a tough route. I was surprised someone gave me information concerning routes, and it was a Bob Ward route, and it was kind of funny because when I got the information, I realized it was the route I had figured out my best route up Coffee Flat. So I ended up kind of working out this route, and it ended up being one of these trips and these ways that Bob Ward would go up. And I'd found things that to let me know just the way rocks were piled or something would happen, that there have been other people up there. But to be honest, in all the trips on Coffee Flat, I can't remember anyone else ever being up there. Now, Randy Wright never made the trip up there with me. He may have made 1 or 2. I know he went out to Spanish Graveyard because we would talk about it. I know he went with someone else, I think, one time. And part of that interest was in the Two Soldiers Tale because it seemed to fit. If you were looking down, you would see the quarter circle U. You could see some smoke. It kind of fit that. And I told him, I've never really run into anything significant up there, but it seems like a prime good location. And there is mineralization up in that mountain, so it's kind of odd. So it has this twisted framework that when I talk about it, it's multiple stories with different multiple points. And there are 2 maps, but it's really hard to configure as if one person's story led to another person's story, because it's odd that it's Kansas City and Oklahoma City, and J.J. Polka's maybe half Indian, maybe not, similar to Coachera, but maybe it's Silas Haywood, and it seems to be this kind of compacting of these different stories. And what's more odd and unusual is all of it starts becoming more publicly known, and these guys start talking about it in the late 50s, early 60s, all at the same time. It's different names and almost different stories, but it seems very similar. Of course, it didn't stop me from going up and checking stuff out. And you can always check out the Stickman story for that, because I don't go into any details. But I did search up there. Like I said, I never caught into much, but there's more than just that story, the Polka story associated. Like Chuck Crawford had some interest on up there. Bob Ward had interest for some other things up there. And even Salvador one day told me, Coffee Flat, yeah, Coffee Flat. And then another individual, I won't use his name, because I don't remember if it was quite him or someone associated, said he said it, so I don't want to quote that. But I was told, oh, no. If you want to kind of some real stuff, you need to get up on Coffee Flat. I'd already been there, so it made me make a return trip because I wanted to know, what is it I missed? You know, what is it that happened? I've had my own very unusual incident up there. Obviously, Polka did. Ward's opinion was that the empty whiskey bottle, and Polka was a bit superstitious, though he played like he wasn't. He believed that's what drove him out of there. I've never had anything that made me not want to go on Coffee Flat. I've always thought it was just a beautiful mountain. Rugged, but beautiful. But there you go. That's kind of Tom Collenborn's Collenborn Chronicles. I don't think it's under the J.J. Polka or anything like that. It could be the older article. And then Thomas Glover has it in his one book, the second in the series for the Lost Dutchman Mine. And he talks about it, has the maps included. And then, like I said, Ward, and in Bob Ward's manuscripts, it'll be dropped in a little brief story. And obviously, Bob knew a lot more information. I'm not sure how he got the depth of his information, but he obviously got something good. And I believe with him and Tom both, they had found that camp. So, and it gives pretty good idea of where you could probably find that boulder, even though Tom said he never had heard of it, never found it, had no idea it was there. And he said Walter Harvin just literally walked right up to it. And so Tom was pretty surprised and realized Walter had been there. Walter had let him know he had started on the story 15 years earlier. He was an older gentleman at that point and wanted Tom, because he wanted to go out with Tom or someone who knew the area and see if he could find this mine. So there you go, the J.J. Polka mine. And hopefully we'll have a couple of the maps up while I'm talking there, and you'll look at this stuff and you can like freeze that picture and look at them. And you'll see what I'm saying is when you first see them, you're just kind of like, what the heck is this? And it is a particular story that has a very kind of smoky, hazy backstory to it. And I've never been able to dig really too much of what I think of it. And I've noticed over time there's a few people that are into it and will talk about it or ask questions about it. But it doesn't have a ton of depth to get in, a lot of meat to get into. And if you've been up there, then you understand it because it's tough. And like a lot of stories, we're talking about a hill with some pine trees and some cactus and a pyramid rock setup. And sometimes it's, you know, I don't know where I got the 3 teepee, rocks like teepees story. But that's what I was looking for. 3 wool boulders, you know, around in a semicircle surrounding the area. And I know I was up there looking for that wherever I pulled that detail. And then someone from Texas got a hold of me and had been up there and told me, asked me where I looked. And we actually compared notes to grid where we looked because we hadn't found it yet. So I don't know how much of one story relates to the other because they are very distinctly different stories that have just enough to overlap to make you wonder. So, and if anybody, some old timer talks to you about Old Squaw, being up on Old Squaw and all this, always take the clarity of the moment to ask and say, hey, are you talking down by Whiskey Springs and LaBarge Box, or are you talking up by Peters Mesa? Because both can be what someone references to. And when you go back and when you're younger, a lot of guys use different terms and they would have their own personal way they would talk to it. So Squaw Teat, Old Squaw, Coffee Flat, all the same thing. I hope this helps. I hope this covers what the individual is looking for, a little talking. Sometimes talking about it brings some more people to bring more information in. But if we ever get an update or we make a trip, we'll definitely put the video footage of us being in the field and some of the particulars up there. And then maybe old stick man will come out for me and Trevor. I don't know how much I'd be really wanting at this point to see that again. It's burned into my memory and I'm pretty much fine if that doesn't happen. But a couple other treasure stories associated with that area, so maybe we'll tell a couple of those. I'd have to have a little permission because I was allowed insider information that I think the people are still actively, as they get older, maybe they are not as active. I'm willing to share, but it's their information and I don't always like to share someone's information. So there you go. Look it up, Tom Collenborn's Chronicles, and you will find some of the information with Walter Harvin and a brief bit about Ward. If you're one of the people that showed up at the rendezvous or someplace where we handed out all these ripples of Lost Echoes, you probably find it in there. Ward wrote about it in some of his other stories. I don't think any of his stuff's published online from his stories when he was Val Paris. But and then additionally, if you can find Thomas Glover's book, The Treasure Tales of the Superstitions, there's several pages in there and some maps and stuff that gives you a little bit. He doesn't mention the Walter Harvin or Tom Collenborn story, so it's kind of like it's missing that piece and element. So put all those pieces, elements together, comment what you think. And that's about it. We don't have much else, unfortunately. It's a cold, rainy day, so maybe that was a good story for a cold, rainy day, because I was up there at Coffee Flat once when it rained like mother, and it was dogs and cats, and it was a pretty miserable day. But I would go up there, and I would literally try to get up there after the crack of dawn, and I would spend the day up there until it was like the sun was coming around the main mountain, and then I would try to book out because you can make good time back to Peralta. So that's it, said and done. Please check out the website, check out everything else, check our videos, share. We do have some stuff coming up. And History's Greatest Mysteries with Lawrence Fishburne and the project I worked on with them. We'll try to do a Chasing Legends, showing my trip and covering stuff for that. And so you got that to look forward, along with some other stories. So there you go, JJ Polka. I looked around on the internet, and outside of Tom's Columborn Chronicles and a couple I didn't see anything on it. So hopefully this maybe spurs or opens things up. Some people share out there. All right. So thank you for watching. I hope everyone has a great rest of the week and enjoyed all this. And always remember, I'm Wayne Tuttle. You're not. And this is Chasing Legends.